And we told them we could take the internet down in 30 minutes if we wanted to. And that was the headline. I mean, if you say you can take the internet down in 30 minutes, so that was the big takeaway from the hearing.
Reflecting on the time with L0pht Group then, Chris, okay. So what were you thinking about? What threats were you guys discussing? Like attacking national infrastructure, just attacking military systems, satellites, NASA, I suppose could be something they could attack. Were these the kind of conversations you were having?
Absolutely. I mean, the big conversation was like, can you take down the internet? That was really the punchline. We came knowing that we knew vulnerabilities in internet routing and the internet routing protocols. And we told them we could take the internet down in 30 minutes if we wanted to. And that was the headline. I mean, if you say you can take the internet down in 30 minutes, so that was the big takeaway from the hearing. And then we told people how to fix this, right? In the government. But yeah, we were talking about taking down the internet. We were talking about taking down the GPS system, satellite communications. We were talking about hacking the power grid. And so, critical infrastructure. And I think that was the start of the federal government really taking this seriously.
Yeah, sure. I mean, taking the internet down in 30 minutes, that was a very impactful thing to say, which I think caught a lot of the imagination of a lot of journalists, didn't it? And I think you did get a bit of notoriety as a result of that. So can you tell us a little bit about that, reflecting on that sort of testimony before the Senate committee? This was 1999. Was it
1998? 98.
Yeah.
So a little over 25 years ago.
Yeah.
So, I think we were scared going into it because we didn't know if we were going to be thought of as the bad guy. Like they were going to say all our problems are due to people like you shouldn't be publishing any of this. All you're doing is hurting. Pointing out problems is hurting, and that is one viewpoint. And, when you think about maybe the federal government, you think like you might be, a scapegoat, right? A lot of these hearings, they turn on the people. And so we had no idea what was going to happen and why we were invited. Should we really believe why we were invited there? They even let us testify with our hacker aliases. Like I had a placard that said Weld Pond in front of me. To my left was a guy with a placard that said Mudge, and to my right was a placard with a guy that said Space Rogue.
I thought they would have had your real names in the Senate committee.
No, and they told us we were the only ones allowed up to that point to use our fake names testifying. The other people were in the witness protection program.
Yeah, that's incredible.
So it was.
You made history there, then, Chris. Yeah,
we made history. So I mean, the whole air of the whole thing was very special. Like it wasn't a run of the mill. Like we have hackers with their hacker names here, and so it was. I mean, a lot of these hearings, not all the senators show up. They all showed up for this. It was a packed house and a packed audience. So it was very exciting. I thought we were making a difference. I thought that we were really connecting with some of the senators. Like Senator John Glenn was there. I got to meet John Glenn, which was amazing. Yeah. And, he had a question about the global positioning system. And he says, Hi, gentlemen. I don't know if you know this, but I'm a pilot. And, obviously
John Glenn was an astronaut, wasn't he? He was one
John Glenn was an astronaut and a test pilot. So, there was some laughter in the room when he said, I'm a pilot, because obviously everyone in there knew that John Glenn was a famous astronaut. First guy to circle the Earth, I think. First human to circle the Earth. So, but, he was obviously technically adept at technology. And he asked about the GPS system. He says, he's a pilot. He flies all the time and he relies on GPS. And we talked about that. So, a lot of it was like very concrete stuff, right? It wasn't like esoteric. It was things that were going to impact people's lives. Yeah. And they wanted to understand, how technology is brittle and vulnerable and what we should do about it.
Yeah, I suppose, if you've got someone like John Glenn pointing out, concerns around, an adversarial's ability to hack into GPS systems, I think people start to listen and take things seriously then, don't they?
Absolutely.
And little did they know this was going to become such a a huge subject matter, and give birth to the cybersecurity space, I suppose, as the internet and everything evolved. But how do you currently see government involvement in regulation around cybersecurity? Have you got any thoughts on how that has played out, today? Our government doing enough? Are we still a little bit behind the curve? I'm talking about the US, I suppose, or globally. What's your thoughts on the current status quo?
Yeah. So, what obviously there was no regulation back in 1998, or very, very little. And we saw that was a problem, because we saw that there was real risks. And we saw with, using software and internet and connecting it up to critical infrastructure was going to cause some real risks. I mean, we saw the Colonial Pipeline. We've seen the power grid go down in places like Ukraine and Estonia with cyber attacks. So it's like no laughing matter. It really is life or death. And there was absolutely no regulation back then. And basically we said that, vendors need to do better. Right? Like vendors need to do this. Like this concept of having external researchers find some things and having those few things be fixed just isn't sustainable. But then again, regulation is challenging around technology, because you want the innovation, right? Like, maybe big companies can handle regulation with teams of lawyers and compliance people, but startups, it's very challenging to comply to different things. So we understood that that regulation was going to be a challenge. I think we're still, some things have changed over time, but we're starting to see some motion in regulation in the United States, at least, and I think in a good way, which is where the buyer expects things of the seller, right?
Yeah.
And so the regulation we're starting to see in the United States came out of the U.S. Biden had an executive order 2 years ago, the cybersecurity executive order, and said the U.S. federal government is going to make vendors of technology attest that they've have security processes and they've tried to make their software and hardware secure. And they're going to show us with facts about what they did. And then we're going to make a judgment. Did they do a good enough job? And that's going to be part of the buying process. And I think that's a good way to not be, heavy-handed, yet have expectations for vendors. And I think most vendors out there do build stuff securely now, but there's a lot that don't, a significant amount that don't. And so, I'm hoping this level of regulation gets everyone on board with, we can make things significantly more secure. Not perfect. No one's looking for perfection. No one's looking for a plane to never have any problem, but we don't want people to die. We don't want them to fall out of the sky. Sure. And so regulation around a dangerous technology seems to make a lot of sense to people. And I think we're heading in the right direction. I think it's just taken so long. Like we talked about holding vendors accountable like 25 years ago, and we're starting to see that now, at least with the federal government. And we're starting to see it in the EU with the Cyber Resiliency Act. And I know the UK is also working on something very similar to hold, especially makers of connected technology like smart TVs and all these IoT devices that are proliferating and controlling our doors and our locks and parts of our lives, make those more secure.